Hello guys, this is Fazlul Hasib. I am All India rank 36 in the UPSC Civil Services Examination 2017, and my optional for Civil Services Examination 2017 was Urdu literature. You're watching me on Delhi Knowledge Track, and I'll be telling you in detail about how my preparation went about and how exactly I prepared my optional subject. So since we're talking on Delhi knowledge track, so I'll use a mixture of languages. I'll talk both in Urdu as well as in English. So for the record, I have scored the highest ever marks in Urdu literature right from 2013 when the pattern was changed. The pattern was changed in 2013, and then the next examination was held in 2014, then 15, then 16, and finally 2017. So right from that point when the pattern was changed, I have scored the highest ever marks in Urdu literature, that is 297. The previous best was a close, I think 291, that was scored by a student in 2016. So in this video I'll guide you about how exactly we'll go about the optional preparation, how exactly we should prepare Urdu, why should we take Urdu as an optional, should we take Urdu as an optional or not. So these are the things I would talk to you about. Now personally speaking, I had read Urdu only up to class 10th, and then after that I went for my engineering in 2010, and basically I lost all my touch with the social science subjects. But since I come from a small literature background, I was interested in Urdu literature, I was interested in English literature, so I would read a bit of Ghalib, a bit of Faiz, but not much. I had never imagined that for my civil services preparation I would take Urdu as an optional subject, but as destiny had it, in 2015 I chose Urdu as my optional subject, and then I went on to write 3 mains examination through Urdu literature. Now my marks progression has been steady. In 2015 mains held in December 2015, I scored 188 marks with 125 in paper 1. Then in 2016, I scored around 245 marks, and in 2017 mains finally I have scored 297 marks. So I'll tell you about the book resources as well and how this slow incremental progression took place with respect to Urdu literature. Now initially when I started my Urdu preparation, what I did was I tried to collect the material, and I tried to connect to people who had already taken Urdu literature as their optional subject. So I spoke to those people who had Urdu literature as their optional, who had done well in their literature. Like I spoke to a few people who had scored well in 2014, 2013, or even before that. So first of all I spoke to them, but after that, then I realized that I needed a specific book list to prepare for the examination. Be rest assured, you don't need a detailed book list for the examination. You just require a specific set of material that would allow you to pass the examination, because ultimately you don't need to become an Urdu scholar. All you need to do is you need to become an you need to understand that you just need to qualify an examination. Now, one book for paper 1 that you need to read is Mirza Khalil Beg. I would repeat it, it's Mirza Khalil Beg, उर्दू की लिसानी तश्कील. ठीक है, तो उर्दू की लिसानी तश्कील by Mirza Khalil Beg, you would read that book for paper 1 section A, right? Then for paper 1 section B, there are 2 books that you need to consult. One is Urdu Nasr ka Tanqidi Mutala by Sumbul Nigar. Then it's Urdu Shairi ka Tanqidi Mutala by Sumbul Nigar again. So for paper 1 basically you need to read 3 books. Now how exactly would you read these 3 books? Now what you would do is you would ensure that you would memorize different lines from the book. What I mean to say is, for example, there is a topic on literary criticism, and there are different writers on literary criticism. For example, there is Al Ahmad Sarur, there is Kalimuddin, there is Ehtisham Hussain. So when you make a note out of them, when you prepare notes from these writers, and when you prepare notes from these writers, what you would do is you would memorize those notes completely. It's not like you would keep a general idea about those things. For example, when you prepare notes line by line, bit by bit, and you prepare a note say of 1 page, so what you would do at the end of the day is you would memorize that 1 page completely, so that you would be you'd be able to replicate it exactly the same way in the examination. In 2015 and 16, what I did was, after preparing my notes, I kept a general idea of everything, which is not how it works. In 2017, I memorized the notes completely, line by line, bit by bit, which allowed me to score good marks in the examination, better than any other candidate who had appeared in the examination. Believe me, there are people with a specific Urdu background who go on and write this examination, and to beat them is very, very tough. But since I had, put in all the hard yards and, followed this strategy where I memorized bit by bit everything, it allowed me to fetch these good marks in the examination. Similarly, this is the thing that would go for all the three books. Okay, these are not big books, these are very small minute books, but these are basic books that you need to read. Apart from that, I had personally consulted, these were local notes that I got from my cousin, and there was this teacher, Mr. Najib Anwar, who would teach in Srinagar and who had already appeared for UPSC interview. I got hold of those notes and I read those notes for paper 1 thoroughly. Now, for example, I read different topics from different places. For example, if there is a note on ghazal, I read those from Najib Anwar notes. But the same ghazal note I did not read from Sumbul Nigar then. So I read one thing from one specific place. I did not read the same thing from different places, because it would have created a mess and which would have been problematic for me. Secondly, what you need to understand about paper 1 is, it's a more of a cramming paper. I mean, there is no specific logic to the paper, there is no specific rationale to the paper. It just goes on in detail about Urdu history, and it goes on in detail about the different genres of Urdu. For example, ghazal, nazm, then there is afsana, then there is dastan and stuff like that. So all you need to do is, you need to consult these 3 to 4 sources: Sumbul Nigar, Urdu ki lisani tashkil, Najib Anwar notes, and once you collect them, you need to make specific notes out of them, memorize them completely, and go and write in the examination. There is no rocket science that is involved. The point is, UPSC asks very direct questions in literature. The only problem with literature is they don't give you much marks now. I mean, specifically with Urdu, I mean, they may give good marks in Tamil and Malayalam, but they don't give good marks in Urdu literature. That goes I mean, that's a very disappointing trend that has been followed over the period of time. Now, another part about Urdu literature is, then we go to paper B. Paper 1, this is all you need to do. There is nothing else you need to do. There are other notes available in the market. For example, there are notes by Asrar Saab. Okay, I have not read them, not even touched them. There are other notes, for example, Maulana Azad. I think some IGNU notes are there. I have not read them. I have not even touched them. Then there is one book that is known as Shaur Fun. I have not even read it. I have not touched it. I think in my third attempt in 2016, I read a couple of topics from Shaur Fun, but you would get to know about those things after you start preparing, and once you reach a specific level, then obviously you will consult other sources to see if there is anything better available. I have not touched Shaur Fun. I have not touched Maulana Azad notes, I repeat, and I have not touched Asrar Saab's notes. I have not even done anything apart from what I have told you for paper on these 4 sources. But there was a point, these 4 sources I had memorized completely. So anything that was asked from these 4 places, very rarely I would miss a question from that. And since I told you UPSC asks very direct questions, so it's very easy for you to answer if you have memorized everything. Now we move to paper 2. Paper 2 again has 2 sections. One is related to Nasr, the prose part. The other is related to the poetry part. Now in the prose part, there are 6 writers that you need to read, and in the poetry part, there are 7 writers that you need to read. Do you need to read them completely? No, you don't. For example, there is one thing known as Bago Bahar. That is one book that you need to read. I mean, it's a very small book, I think around 180 pages. Just go through it a couple of times. It's a good story. It's a dastan. It's an old folklore where he goes on and on about pari and jinn and stuff like that. So you read that a couple of times. It's a fun read, but it's necessary to read that one book. Then we move to Khatut-e-Ghalib. Just read 5 to 6 letters. You don't need to read anything beyond that, because you would understand if there is an iqtibas or a section that comes in the examination, you would directly understand that this is from Khatut Ghalib. ठीक है. Then there is the third thing, अपने दुख मुझे दे दो. You need to read that book. It's a book collection of short stories, very evocative, very brilliant, emotional, very well written by Rajendra Singh Bedi. It's a wonderful read even if you are not preparing for the examination. In any case, you need to read that book. So that makes it 3 books. Then there is Godan by Premchand. Just read 30-40 pages. That's about it. You don't need to go on completely into the book. Then there is Gubare Khatir by Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. Okay. Gubare Khatir you need to read once. In fact, a couple of times, because once the iqtabas comes in the examination, iqtabas, most of you who have Urdu literature as their optional or who know about Urdu literature know what is iqtabas. It's basically a section of prose that comes in the examination. You need to analyze that part and write in detail about what is the general idea that the author is trying to convey in that specific paragraph, and then you need to write about what is known as fun, the artistic style of the writer. And then there is one book by Muhammad Hussain Azad, which is known as Nairang-e Khayal. It's a collection of essays. It's not even a collection of essays. It's a collection of what they call as inshaya. Okay. So inshaya is a bit different from mazmoon, which is known as the essays. You need to read that once. 5 to 8 inshayas you need to read from that book. So if we collectively look at it, we don't need to read every book completely. We need to read Gubare Khatir completely. We need to read Bago Bahar completely. So these 2 books we need to read completely. Apart from that, Khatut Ghalib, just read a few Khatut. And Apne Dukh Mujhe De Do, we need to read completely. So apart from that, Godan, the other 3 books that I referred to, Godan, Nairang-e Khayal, and the Godan, Nairang-e Khayal, and there is one more book that I talked about. That is something you don't need to read completely. So 3 books you'll read completely and 3 you won't read completely. Then we move to the poetry part. Okay? So in the poetry part, if you look at it, there are 7 writers that you need to do. Okay? So 7 writers, there is Ghalib, there is Faiz, there is Iqbal, there is Firaq, there is Akhtarul Iman, and there are other 2 writers. Okay? So in this, you need to get those things marked which are very, very important. Now in Ghalib, you don't need to read the entire Diwan-e Ghalib. All you need to do is you need to mark specific points and specific pages. For example, there are specific ghazals in Ghalib that are important. There are specific ghazals in Iqbal that are important, and there are specific ghazals in Faiz that are important. There are specific ghazals in Akhtarul Iman that are important. There are specific ghazals in Firaq that are important. So on and so forth. So you don't need to read the entire book. Now, how would you mark those important points? Ask any student who is preparing for the optional subject Urdu literature in Jamia Millia Hamdard Study Circle or Jamia Hamdard Residential Coaching Academy. Get those, you go to those places once and you just get those books from there, and it has all the things marked. There is no problem with that. I mean here I can't in detail reveal about what exactly the important ghazals are. I mean, I can't just go on giving you those things in detail, but once you need to visit these places or you need to contact anybody including me, my email ID I would give you at the end of this video, and I would tell you what are the important ghazals that you need to read. So you need to go through those ghazals. Okay, there are explanations given. For example, Diwan-e Ghalib, there is a detailed tashri given in the form of a book by Yusuf Salim Chasti. Then there is Allama Iqbal ki Bale Jibril, there is a detailed tashri given by Yusuf Salim Chasti only. Then if we move to Faiz Ahmad Faiz, then there is Sharah Kalam-e Faiz that details about Faiz's poetry, Daste Sabah. It is available on Rekhta. You don't get it anywhere else. Just search Sharah Kalam-e Faiz on Google and you would get that. Fourthly, then Intikhab-e Kalam-e Mir, you would get the Tashri from Sher Shor Angez by Shamsur Rahman Farooqi. But in Mir, you just need to do a few ghazals. I think there are 5 to 8 ghazals. You have to get them marked from somewhere. I told you, either contact me on email or visit Jamia Millia Islamia Hamdard Study Circle or Jamia Hamdard Residential Coaching Academy. These 3 places, or contact me on email. I'll give you the email at the end. So what you need to do is you need to go through these books. Firaq you can do yourself, Akhtarul Iman you can do yourself, Sehrul Bayan mein Mir Hasan you can do yourself. So there is no problem with those things. Okay? So this is how you do about that. Then apart from that, you need to prepare specific questions. For example, there are 13 questions, 7 from poetry, 6 from prose, that you need to prepare specifically on the general idea of an author. Where did I do that? It's a very simple answer. I did that from multiple sources. One source was Najib Anwar notes. He had given a general idea about every author, and he had written what he called as Tankidi Jaiza of each book or each author. Okay, so that's where I got the 13 different questions. Secondly, then I looked at the UPSC questions for the past 5 years. ठीक है, जिसमें 5 साल में what I did was I looked at the number of questions UPSC has asked from different authors. For example, खतूत गालिब में से क्या पूछ लिया, कबार खातर में से क्या पूछ लिया, and then Mir Aman se kya pooch liya and stuff like that, and from the book I framed answers for that. For example, there is this one specific question on Ghalib ki Bazla Sanji. Ghalib ki Bazla Sanji means the sarcastic power of Ghalib, or the sarcastic tone of Ghalib. So there was this one specific question. Now you won't get this question from anywhere. So what you need to do is, when you read those letters of Ghalib, specifically you need to mark those specific points where he has used a sarcastic tone. For example, he writes in one of the places, आम ऐसी चीज़ है जो गधा भी नहीं खाता. ठीक है, तो इसी तरह आप ढूंढेंगे उन चीज़ों को. जैसे वो लिखते हैं, हाई तुम्हारी फूफी कहती है हाई दबी हाई मरी. ठीक है, तो ऐसे ऐसे पॉइंट्स यू नीड टू फॉर्म, एंड यू नीड टू फॉर्म इट फ्रॉम द बुक ओनली. बुक विल गिव यू अ स्पेसिफिक आइडिया. आई हैव नो आइडिया अबाउट असरार साहब्स नोट्स और एनी अदर प्लेस. आई मीन, if maybe he would have written about these things in detail, you can check them also, because those are the other sources as well. But for myself, I directly referred the book. I took out the question from UPSC papers, and then specifically framed answers on my own. Similarly, for example, there was this 1857 के वक्त दिल्ली की हालत बहुत ख़राब थी. खतूत गालिब में 1857 के हालात की अक्कासी की गई है. इस पर दलील दीजिए, तबसरा कीजिए. सो फ्रॉम द बुक ओनली I picked out specific points where Ghalib had written about 1857. Now, if I tell you about other questions, for example, गालिब के यहाँ आज के हालात की अक्कासी नज़र आती है. जैसे मिर्ज़ा गालिब के यहाँ आज के हालात की अक्कासी नज़र आती है उनकी शायरी में. If there is one question like this, so from the दीवाने गालिब only, I picked out specific couplets, specific shares, then analyzed them in the modern context and wrote them on my own. ठीक है, this is the strategy that I followed. Similarly, for Iqbal, if there was a question on कि अल्लामा इकबाल के यहाँ आज के मसाइल के मुतल्लिक एक 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 मुख्तसर अंदाज में उन्होंने बहस की है, ऐसा कुछ क्वेश्चन होगा, या उनके यहाँ वो खुतबा देते हुए नज़र आते हैं, या ऐसा कुछ क्वेश्चन है. इफ देयर इज़ अ क्वेश्चन लाइक दिस, सो व्हाट आई वुड डू वाज आई वुड पिक बाले जिब्रील, pick out 4-5 couplets from Bale Jibril, analyze each couplet separately, and then prove it to him that how his poetry is still relevant in the modern context. Similarly for other poets also. So in every sense, in every question, I, apart from following Sumbul Nigar, apart from following Khalil Beg, and apart from following Najib Anwar notes, this is specifically what I did. Picked out the questions, then read the text myself, picked out specific points related to those questions, and then formed my own notes, memorized them completely, and ultimately wrote it in the examination. Okay, there is one more part that you need to understand, and that is related to Tashri and Salis. There is a 50 mark compulsory section for Iqtibas in section A, and there is a 50 marks compulsory section for Tashri share in paper B. Now what you need to do is, you need to practice that, because in order to write one 10 marker question, you will approximately have 7 to 8 minutes, and and this time they had given 5 couplets to write in 7 to 8 minutes, which is a very difficult task. So A, you need to read the Tashri beforehand. ठीक है, I told you the sources. There is Diwan Ghalib, which is available in the market. There is Bale Jibril, that is available in the market. There is there is Sharah Kalam Faiz, that is available on Rekhta. There is Sher Shor Anges, that is available in the market. Then Firaq you can do on your own, Sairul Bayan you can do on your own, Akhtarul Iman you can do on your own. The only thing is, you need to mark those specific ghazals that are very important, and I'm repeating, there are 2 ways to do it. Either visit Jamia Millia Islamia, Hamdard Study Circle, Jamia Hamdard Residential Coaching Academy, contact an Urdu student, or email me. I'll give you the email at the end. I'm repeating that. Okay? So that's how you need to do it. So coming back to the Tashri and the Iqtibas part, there are 2 ways to do it. One specific way to do it is, in fact, that's the best way to do it. When you write the Iqtibas, what you do is, you pick out 3 general ideas from the paragraph that is given and then write those in the sayak part. I'm repeating. There is a paragraph given, you pick out 3 general ideas and then you write them in the sayak. ठीक? In the sabak, sorry, in the, you pick out 3 general ideas and then you write them in the sabak, not in the sayak part. In the sayak part, what you would do is you would write about the background of the topic. ठीक है? It's a very simple thing. I'm repeating it. In the sayak part, you would write about the background of the topic. In the sabak part, you would pick out 3 general ideas from the topic and then you would write about them. And then in the fun part, where you need to write about the artist's way, what exactly he has used, whether he has used sanat tazad, whether he has used miratun nazir, whether he has used takrar alfaz, whether he has used sanat manfi, whether he has used any other ishtiqaq and all that. You would, when you would be reading the paragraph one by one, what you would do is step by step at each point of time you would keep on picking out the sanats. ठीक है? If there is like you're reading the topic, you're reading the paragraph and there is a line which says or, so this is takrar alfaz, so you'd immediately underline it. So when you're reading the paragraph for the first time, at that point only you would pick out all the sanats, because the time is very less. It's about approximately 7 to 8 minutes to write this whole paragraph, which is very less. So if you are able to do that in the first instance itself, you're good to go. Now how would you do that? You just practice at home. ठीक है? You solve all the UPSC papers for the past 7 to 8 years, or specifically 5 years from the point of time when the pattern has changed. You read all those papers. You would be approximately getting how many? There are 5 iktibas per paper, so calculate how many iktibas you would get. It's almost 25. So 25 iktibas, if you've practiced regularly like this in a span of 7 to 8 minutes, you're good to go. So in the tashri part, which is the shairi part, it's a specific thing that you need to do. Write the tashri of each sher in 3 to 4 lines, not more than that. For example, if there is a sher, bazi chaad faal hai duniya mere aage, hota hai shaboroz tamasha mere aage. So it's a simple couplet. So what you need to do is write what Ghalib is saying in 3 lines, not more than that, because the time will not permit you to do anything beyond that. ठीक है? Similarly, if there is दिल ही तो है ना संगो खिस दर्द से भरना आए क्यों रोएंगे हम हजार बार कोई हमें सताए क्यों, या अगर हंगामा हाय शौक से है लामका खाली खता किसकी है यार अब लामका तेरा है या मेरा. So specific shares like this. So what you would do is you will just write the tashri in 3 to 4 lines, not more than that. Similarly, you would write the fun as soon as you read the couplet. For example, when you're reading the couplet and there is something related to takrar, tazad or any other thing, write that at that point of time. And when you go on writing the fun in the actual examination, when you're actually writing it, you just specifically look at the paper and see, okay, this was the fun when I had read it for the first time, and then you specifically write it down. So that's about it for tashri. That's about it for salis. So this is the overall Urdu strategy that I had personally followed. There is no need to read huge amount of books. I have repeated it consistently. Even in the Nasr part, I told you earlier, only Mir Aman, Gubare Khatir and Apne Dukh Mujhe De Do, you need to read those books from cover to cover a couple of times. The other 3 books, Nairange Khayal, Godan, and the other book, Khatut-e Ghalib, those are 3 books you don't need to read completely. Read 5, 20, 30, 40 pages and that's about it, and just a couple of times. Okay? In the shairi part, you need to read specific ghazals or specific nazms, not more than that. So there is in no way you need to read the entire thing. Now the fundamental question, should we take Urdu as an optional subject? The point is, Urdu has not been doing well of late. Okay? If you analyze the trend and then if you compare the marks of Urdu literature with other optional papers, you would realize that Urdu has not been doing too well. When 297 is your highest for the past 5 years, then there is something definitely wrong with the optional or with the marking. God knows what it is, or maybe the students are not writing that well. Okay, because in other optional subjects such as Anthro, you're getting 340, in math you're getting 370, in other subjects you're getting 360, even geography people are getting 330, 327. Okay, so Urdu has not been doing well of late. Okay, but is there a case to take Urdu? One case, you'll still end up getting average marks even if you don't do too well. ठीक है, so that is one advantage with Urdu. You'll get up you'll end up getting average marks around 240, 250 if you write good enough, if you write in a good enough way in the examination. That is one advantage with Urdu. But the other disadvantage with Urdu now that has come in, you need to really understand the paper, because now you need to write 19 questions in the examination. Okay, there are 19 questions that you need to write in the examination, and after writing 19 questions in the examination, and in order to complete those 19 questions, you need to understand the subject in detail. It's not like you pick up some notes, memorize it, and that's about it. No, you need to understand the subject in detail. I mean, for paper 1 maybe you may do well like I did in 2015, but for paper 2, in order to do well in paper 2, you need to be very very involved in Urdu, because now is a point where you need to read the tashri, you need to read the prose section. Earlier before 2013, you could skip most of the things, okay, because only 3 ghazals would come in the examination, mostly Ghalib and Iqbal would come. But now it's not like that, it's a different trend. So before taking Urdu literature as an optional subject, you look at your strengths, look at whether you can do Urdu completely, you can do justice with the subject, because we end up taking Urdu literature as an optional subject and then we end up failing in the examination. I mean, there are so many students I know who have taken Urdu literature as the optional subject, but at the end of the day have not gone through with it. And what they have done is they have changed their optional subject to anthro or other subjects. Okay? But if you're good enough in Urdu, if you feel you're good enough in Urdu, if you feel that you can put in that extra effort, you can write well in the examination, because one of the biggest problems in Urdu is your writing. I mean, you need to write very fast. In English, we can write very fast, but in Urdu, to write very fast, you need to practice a lot. So these are the things you need to understand before taking Urdu literature as an optional subject. Good luck, and please share and subscribe Delhi Knowledge Track. They're doing very, very well to help these civil servant UPSC aspirants. And thanks a lot. Keep watching.